It's my pleasure to begin an exciting program. Thank you all for being here today. I would like to, if there's anybody who's dialed in that's new to the post or would like to say hello to everyone. Normally this half hour before the program is time for us to network and communicate. So someone would like to say hi, please do so. Do I see some hands raised?
Yes, that's me. That's Colonel Patrick Hoagland. I've used this feature enough. I figured I'd go ahead and use it. But I'm a member of the DC Post, but I'm much more active in the Atlanta Post. But with virtual, we can do a lot of things. And with San Antonio canceling their meeting today because of weather, I was able to stick with DC. So I'm a colonel in the Army. See some folks that I've worked with before, former bosses, former friends, SME fellow. Long-time member of SME, but I work with the Office of Local Defense and Community Cooperation. So welcome. I'm happy to be here today.
Well, very welcome. Thank you for introducing yourself. Is anyone else?
Hi, Selena. This is Joe Wells with Dewberry. I hope you're doing well, Selena. It's been a while.
Yes.
I primarily attend the Baltimore Post events and am involved up there. I see some other names in the presenter panel here that we're familiar together, and look forward to the presentation. Thanks for offering it.
Welcome, Joe. Good to hear your voice. Anyone else?
Hello, this is Stuart Hazlett. I'd just like to say hello. I retired from the Army last spring, and I've moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and launched my own consulting company. So I'm between the Charleston Post and the DC Post. So thank you.
Welcome, Stuart. I hope that you continue to join in for the rest of our year. I don't think there's anyone else, is there? Before we get started, I do want to ask you to mute your audio. And if you haven't done so, please type your name into the chat box so we know that you're here in attendance, because we're also offering the PDH certificates for your participation in this great program. I want to thank our new programs and event committees, who I'm very grateful to be working with, Bree and Allison, James Pittman, Whitney Stowell and Alison Yates and Philios. There are a lot of behind the scenes helpers to make these programs look seamless and have high caliber content. And we couldn't do it without everyone else on the board committees. We are all volunteers, as you know, and everybody's efforts are very much appreciated. We've got a really exciting program to kick off the year. You can tell by the number of participants, over 100 today. And we have a very strong panel of speakers who've want to tell us the story of how they put together a national response to the COVID-19 public health crisis. And so we've got representatives from the Army Corps, from the architecture and construction fields, who are here to talk about the alternative care facilities, or ACFs, that have went up at a rapid rate unexpectedly when pandemic reared its face, this time last year. Really can't wait to begin the program, but as usual, we would like to begin with a brief moment of silence to remember our active duty military and first responders and all who need our care and thoughts right now. Bree, next slide, please. I'd like to turn it over to Daryl Starks, who is our Post Young Members Director, who will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Daryl?
Sure thing. Thanks, Selena. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to lead the pledge. I'm going to say it out loud, and please feel free to recite it from your homes. No need to come off mute, but I'll feel your energy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Next slide, please. Here we would like to thank our post sponsors for all your support. That's WSP, who I believe is on the call today, Terracon, AMT, Kaufman Engineers, Alpha Corporation, Prime AE, and Jacobs. We truly appreciate your support, and we couldn't put these events on without you, and grateful for your constant support. It helps us meet our goals and provides excellent content for our members. But during the year, you know, we want you to take advantage of the benefits of being our post sponsors, which really have a direct benefit with our students and young members group, enriching the STEM pipeline and preparing our military and veterans for life after the service. Next slide, please. Before we begin, USACE delivers in national emergency. I wanted to point out to you that by participating as an attendee, you will get an hour of professional development. And to get it, please register in the chat box. We'll make note of your attendance and hope that you'll begin to enjoy the program. I would like to introduce our moderator, Jim Whitaker, for today. He's a licensed architect, former contractor and passionate advocate, educator and influencer of high-performance teams. He's been an architect for more than 35 years, published author and a sought-after speaker in the design and construction industry. He's the only practicing architect that's been elevated to fellow within the AIA and DBIA professions. He is also serving currently as the Chancellor of the DBIA College of Fellows and on the board of the Construction Industry Roundtable. He's a father of 5, hails from North Carolina, graduate of the University of Tennessee, and a former Army officer. And I have to relay this fact that Jim was the survivor, or a survivor, of the flight 1549, United Airways in 2009, that crashed into the Hudson River. So talk about recovery and resilience. Jim, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to you. Please introduce the panelists, and let's see, Bree, I'll hand it over to you to change the slides.
Thank you, Selena. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Selena, for the introduction and setting up the meeting, and Bree for the program leadership and all the leadership team of the Post. Happy to be here. Good conversation. Hopefully we'll have a better landing than we did on the river 12 years ago. But here we go. So incredible list of speakers today. I want to do some quick bios, and then once they begin to speak, there may be some more introductions that they offer about themselves. First of all, we do have a uniformed officer on the team today, so we'll start with Colonel Litz. Colonel John Litz is the 68th commander of the USACE Baltimore District, which has over 1,000 employees and a multi-billion-dollar program of design and construction, not only throughout the Mid-Atlantic, but in a larger footprint and worldwide. Colonel Litz has served all over the world, including hotspots of both Afghanistan and Iraq. He's a decorated engineering officer. He is a registered engineer and a product of the University of Tennessee, as am I. Go Volunteers. He's a 26-year career Army officer serving this great country. And until this event, we didn't know that we had gone to matching high schools only 15 miles apart. Welcome, Colonel Litz. Tara Van Loo is the interim chief of the construction division of the USACE Baltimore district. Her permanent day job. She's responsible for the East Campus Design and Construction Program at Fort Meade, which is a mere $4 billion plus spend. Many of us on this call and this group today know well that program. She's a 29-year distinguished career veteran at USACE Baltimore District. Importantly, she was a leader of the COVID-19 task force at the time. She's a registered engineer herself and a product of the University of Maryland. Katrina Winter, another speaker, is the Vice President of Design Services at Clark Construction, a private sector contractor based in Bethesda. In her 16-year career in the Mid-Atlantic region, Katrina's been part of and responsible for a large volume of work, including complex, often design-build projects throughout the region. She has a bachelor's and a master's from the University of Virginia. She's a well-recognized woman in the construction business in the Mid-Atlantic area, and she, interestingly, survived the alternative care facility building campaign firsthand herself and has some insights on that. And then lastly, my partner and friend at HKS and architect Brent Wilson is a 35-year architect singularly dedicated to military medicine throughout the United States and all over the world. I guess Brent has done every conceivable type of medical facility, MTF, from a clinic to a replacement hospital. He's a licensed architect. He's currently in Texas today, where he's not wearing the swimsuit because it's still not above freezing. He's a product of Texas Tech. He's a fellow of the Health Facility Institute, and he too lived one of the alternative care facilities firsthand. So that is the speaking team, a lot of talent today. I'll ask you please to send your questions into the chat. Please, please, please. We'll come back to those at the end. So we won't have a free-for-all. Please add your name and your firm or affiliation in the city from which you write, so we'll know who you are to add interest to our conversation. Please do mute your phones. And then here we go. So again, the conversation is about the alternative care facilities, just for a quick recitation of the facts, and they are huge. It was a $1.8 billion spend in an incredibly short period of time, 75 days from the first facility to the last finished. From New York to Oklahoma, there were hundreds of facility assessments done in that period, though. 15,000 beds put into service in 38 different facilities. And the best part of the story was, for many that were involved and the many more that witnessed it was a really special event where extraordinary things happened when ordinary people got together, all very mission driven to do the right thing. And that's the point of our conversation today. What we've done is we've divided questions into three basic categories of conversation. First is going to be about process, procedure, and protocol into a bucket of conversation. Two, about people. And then thirdly, about personal experiences, okay? So having said all that, we'll open with you, Colonel Litz, if we could. And I'd like to ask you, sir, to begin with, considering the enormity of the task that we're talking about and the demand to go at the time, what was the battle plan process inside of USACE once the direction came down to implement, meaning how much planning was there before the direct order was to move out, sir?
Hey, thanks, Jim. I think you did a good job framing this up. So I think, to amplify your setup, if we remember what happened a year ago, initially, what we were trying to achieve is additional bed space capacity, not necessarily beds, but USACE was trying to provide bed spaces. So if you remember General Semonite, how he got out in front of this very early. He is he is the one that energized the USACE enterprise by sensing the need through his conversations with national leaders, and then he charged the Huntsville Center to come up with concepts for how we might be able to support our communities, hospital systems, and so on with bed spaces. So they came up with a initial concept to retrofit hotels, and this is before we really understood what a COVID compliant facility would look like, and really over a period of a few days, we realized that there were several other concepts that could be employed, and I think overall there were 4 or 5 concepts: arena to healthcare, hotel to healthcare, and so some mobile concepts out there as well. And so
eggs
I
or
think
something?
that he.
What are you gonna eat?
Hey, Doom, can you hear me?
Yes, keep going, Colonel Litz.
Okay, sorry about that. Hey, so we got these concepts out on the street early, and we were doing that in stride with getting our personnel that were made generally across the Corps within the districts, made up of ad hoc organizations within the districts, to get out and partner with our emergency management partners in the states and also Washington, D.C. to conduct assessments, facility assessments, to give our partners options on how they could increase their bed spaces, whether it was retrofitting an old hospital that had closed down or retrofitting a hotel or so on. So I would say that USACE did a pretty good job of getting a plan out there early, so that the larger sphere of stakeholders could get moving in the same direction with ad hoc USACE task forces. And at the same time, I think it's important to mention that FEMA was the lead for this. USACE is working for FEMA at this point through mission assignments, and that's where we were taking our direction from. But I want to mention our industry partners. Many of you that are probably on this call right now assisted us greatly by leaning forward and putting together the glossy brochures to very quickly to let us know what your capabilities were and what you were thinking, and all that leaning forward kind of paid off when it came to the next phase after the assessments were done of facilities across the country. There were well over 1,000 assessments done. My district did, in Pennsylvania, D.C., and Maryland did, I think, around 90 assessments alone. It really paid off when it came to the construction phase, when FEMA started giving us those mission assignment task orders to design and construct the facilities. And for my district, it was the Hagerstown Correctional Facility that was eventually terminated that contract and turned over to the state to finish execution. It was the Walter E. Washington Convention Center in downtown DC, where we ended up doing a design build contract with Hensel Phelps to provide 443 bed spaces in that facility, which is standing today. And that project turned out great, about 30 days from start to finish. It was amazing. And then the United Medical Center, we constructed 6 prototype pods, if you will, shipping containers that we turned into an ICU capability. And both those pods and the DC Convention Center were COVID compliant. They had negative pressure inside for all of the bed spaces that those facilities provided. So hopefully that gives you an idea. So the planning was kind of it was quick. And we were making adjustments in stride with our partners, FEMA, and our industry partners, and I think it came together pretty well. But Jim, back over to you for comments from the others. Thanks.
Sir, I think you call that fire and adjust, don't you? Darren, I have a question for you in terms of from the operational perspective alone. Now, that was a great overarching conversation from Colonel Litz about what do we got to do here. From a practical matter, Tara, how did you go about accessing? You obviously have been involved in billions of dollars of design and construction. How did you go about accessing and utilizing your AEC network to make this happen? You couldn't call Ghostbusters, so what were your next steps? How did you mobilize? Tara, are you with us? Come back, Tara. While we're waiting to find Tara, if we'll please mute our phones. If you're not speaking, we're getting a lot of chatter. That makes it difficult for the rest of the group. So please mute your phones. Dara, are you with us? Well, then we'll jump and come back to Dara. So Katrina, we're going to move over now from the USACE side, and we'll come back to Dara when she signs back on.
Yes, sir.
Being a long time, for sure, construction provider for all kinds of projects in DOD and other agencies.
What do you got
For the construction contractor, there had to have been a tremendous mental shift required to drop into the 24/7 crisis management mode versus the traditional lockstep process and procedure of contracting, executing a contract, go to work. Talk about how different a process that was to take the tanker to sea this time.
Sure, certainly. Thank you, Jim. And I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to participate in a discussion about what a special opportunity, unique opportunity this was for all of us to do our professional but also civic duty. So for me, it was a significant honor to be a part of the Clark team that responded to this. We were in a design build arrangement with HKS. Mr. Whitaker and I got to work together again, and we were tasked with the Hagerstown Alternative Care Facility in Hagerstown, Maryland, which is located at the Roxbury Correctional Institution campus. And we had a remarkable team that was assembled overnight. And by overnight, we actually assembled a month before we received the letter of contract with the statement of work on Friday, April 10th. In the early parts of March, we saw this coming on the horizon. We knew that we wanted to position ourselves to be ready for this, whatever came our way. And so when we got the call in early April, we were ready to go. We received that letter of contract the evening of Friday, April 10th. We were all on site Saturday, April 11th, about 60 odd individuals combined from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the Maryland Department of Corrections and a whole host of departmental entities. And we did our initial site walk. It was a vacant facility. And we concluded that walk on the Saturday. We were given the Sunday off very graciously by the Corps of Engineers, and then we hit the ground running 7 a.m. on Monday morning, the 13th of April. So I think the element of it that I am the most proud of, that I hope I have an opportunity to replicate again, obviously for circumstances not as dire as this pandemic, would be the way that every team was all in, and every company sent their A team. None of us, well, some of us knew each other, but some of us were meeting each other for the very first time, and we had to instantaneously hit the ground running. Our first few strategy design conversations, which began on Monday morning, were held in the prison facility itself, and we were struggling with issues of Wi-Fi because those brick and masonry walls are thick. And so we had a really hard time figuring out within the first hour or so, but we did figure it out, how to space ourselves out so we were safe, but then also work together collaboratively with folks that were also not physically located in the facility with us. So I think the overarching theme was not to settle for, well, this is hard and this seems nearly impossible. It was, how are we going to get to yes? And so that meant there had to be a lot of creativity, but also we had to make sure that we were compliant with the requirements of the contract. And so one of the first things that we did on that Monday morning was we met with our client and we level set on what the core priorities were. Obviously, the schedule of delivery was the paramount mission. And so we identified which trades and which processes needed to be very carefully adhered to with regards to the preparatory, initial, and follow-up phases. And then whenever there was a gray area, we had to ask ourselves, is it going to be something that compromises our ability to deliver this on time? And if the answer was yes, then we came up with a way to work around it. And so for that part, I'm really amazed that in 3.5 days, we came up with a design. The sub community priced it out on the Thursday, and by Friday, we had a price proposal that we submitted back to the Corps. And that's the fastest I've ever done that.
That's an incredible story. That's an incredible story. Dara, I believe you're back online now. Can we go? Thank you, Katrina. Can we go backwards to you, Dara?
Sure. Sorry about
awesome.
that.
Let me reframe that question for you, Dara. And thank you for being patient. So the question was from the on high platform of what Colonel Litz described, and I know you heard the question, but reframing it for the audience. So now you have to make it happen. How did you even go about beginning to access your network of the AEC community to let's go to work?
Okay, so as you know, Baltimore District is blessed geographically, or some would say maybe not blessed geographically, but being, you know, in the DC, Baltimore metro area, we have a wide network of architect engineers and construction contractors. And so we're very fortunate that we have so many qualified professionals to work with. And of course, we execute a very large design and construction program. So we have very well established relationships as well with our industry partners. So it actually, that part of it, believe it or not, was really easy because every single one of our industry partners, and even those who maybe don't routinely do work with Baltimore District, were reaching out to us. You know, we kind of had to set up a point of contact to just take all of the calls that were coming in from our industry partners that were raising their hands and wanting to help. So that part of it was actually pretty easy. We didn't have to go out and really seek help. You know, help was coming to us, which was, you know, was awesome. I mean, once again, it just goes to show in this time of crisis, everyone just pulling together to work for our nation to come up with a solution in this time of need. So that actually, you know, was very easy. We were very fortunate. You know, one of the big things is we had to move very, very fast. So when we were tasked by the states to do facility assessments in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and DC, we really utilized in-house resources because that is, you know, just a quicker way for us to be able to respond. And between our engineering staff and then pulling in some key disciplines that work in our construction offices and kind of have that field experience, we put together 3 different assessment teams. Originally, we kind of started out with a mindset of thinking we would break it up by state, but we quickly found that that wasn't going to work out because each state was at a different level of their planning and where they were in the process. And so that really didn't work out. So we really just had 3 standing teams that would go out and do assessments as we were getting the requests that were coming in. So utilizing a lot of in-house resources for those facility assessments, but certainly we touched bases with all of our architect engineers that we had existing contracts with capacity to ensure that if we needed additional support, that they were able to support. And of course, every single one of them said, absolutely, you know, we're here to support and help the district with this mission. And then certainly on the construction side, you know, that was a little harder to plan because we really had no idea the extent of the mission assignments and the mission assignment task orders, which is really kind of the piece that tells us you're going to get a build mission. We really had no idea of what the states were going to actually task the Corps of Engineers through FEMA to actually construct on their behalf. So that was really challenging. But like I said, all of our construction contractor partners, they were all in it. They wanted to help however they could. And so it made it really easy, easy in the respect that we had lots of contractors, but difficult in the respect of, you know, trying to select, you know, which contractor for what build mission, and then not even knowing what that build mission looked like. It was really challenging. But I have to say, you know, once again, the architect, engineer, and construction community rose to the occasion. They were great partners with us. We never could have accomplished this mission without them. And it's really great when you don't have to seek them out, but they're coming to the Corps of Engineers and saying, how can I help?
Fantastic story, there. Just fantastic. I mean, that is another one. We'll get into some personal stories later, but just another example of when it's on the line in our small little world of AEC service providers and the agencies for whom we work. That's just a fantastic story. Let's jump over to the design side now. Let's go back to the service provider side. We talked about construction. Now let's talk about the design side, Brent. So Brent, from your perspective, you've been around military medicine and DoD facilities for your whole working life. Not to say you're old or anything, you're just sort of old. So my question would be this: if it was difficult for the construction contractor to get rocking, what about the design perspective in terms of how different, how jarring was it? What were the initial procedural and process challenges that you saw out of the gate? Brent, are you with us?
Yeah, unmute Brent.
I did it again, didn't I? I muted and didn't take myself off.
Enough.
Hello, Mr. Wilson.
I was saying all these great words and no one heard them. No, I was saying thank you, Jim. And I was saying, as others had said, it was an honor to participate in the one that I participated. This was in Oklahoma. I would say, you know, spending all of my career in doing military healthcare design, as the government has come to us in the past and said, we want you to do this work for us, the ask was always very clear, right? The definition of our work, our services was very clear. That was not true here. I mean, I recall the same kind of speed and process that Katrina was talking about. We had pre-teamed with a contractor. We kind of knew what was coming. We were waiting for decisions to be made. And boom, the contract was signed and it was be on the ground the next day. So, you know, the theme of all of our conversations has been about speed, 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 speed. That's what everything was about. And so as I arrived on site, you know, part of the thing was, what's the ask? Yeah, we could read the scope of work. And I think, Dara, you mentioned this, right? The scopes were, I'll put them in my words, they were high level, they were generic. A scope that was written for a convention center had the same kind of scope written for, like in my case, was a healthcare facility that was being, so the ask, understanding that ask for everybody was quite difficult. And then so as we arrived on the site working with the contractor, not only what was the big ask from the government, but as the contractor was, you know, what's our requirement? What are we doing on the ground here? What's our next step? Katrina, you mentioned it too, a process and procedure. Usually as we all work on projects, you know most of the team members, you've been engaged prior to coming together. And literally we were slammed together. Many people didn't know each other. Definitely a challenge. There was just no prep time. There was no time to develop relationships. There was no time to plan it out. Again, it goes back to that concept of speed, I would say. We knew this wasn't going to be traditional. Our contract was 12 days, right? And so hanging over all of us was, this has got to get done. It's got to happen fast. Decisions have to be on the fly. And you know, there's no delay. Delays are not acceptable. And so different world, you know, it was clearly a challenge, and never had to deliver, quote, design services at that breakneck speed before. And I say design services in quotes. We'll talk about that a little bit more. What does that mean? But again, I think understanding what the scope was, understanding who the players were in our case. Example, we were in a hospital that was partially operational, right? So there was an owner, right? There's still an owner being represented of this hospital. It wasn't just the Corps, it wasn't just the contractor. And so there was another player coming in here and getting an understanding of how we were working inside their operating hospital became a challenge. Again, with that speed, working 24/7. So I guess, Jim, to say that the challenges and the processes and procedures, they were all new. We were making it up as we go. We were building the train as we were going along, as a good euphemism. So it was all different. It was challenging, but as said, we had great success, and so it was a good experience.
That mission first mentality seemed to have touched a lot of people's hearts. That's for certain. Let's go back to Colonel Litz, to you, sir. I'm going to give you the heads up here. We're going to finish this round on process, procedure, protocol, sir, and bring it back to you. USACE is a gigantic entity, of course. It accomplishes billions of dollars of work every year. In this particular circumstance, sir, were there unique authorities, special permission, double top secret handshakes dispensed? What was the secret sauce to making this happen at such a speed, sir?
Hey, Jim.
Yes, Colonel.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Go forward.
Okay. Yeah. It takes a second to come off of mute with *6. Okay. Hey, so a few things come to mind. Really, our acquisition authorities became very focused on the mission at hand and streamlined. During this effort, because of the sense of urgency that we all remember, the undefinitized contract actions were, that's something that isn't the a daily mainstay of the core district, but it certainly was one of the things that allowed us to execute so quickly with our industry partners. So it's a way to get our industry partners moving without a whole lot of fretting about the scope. Get something down, work it out with with the partners, with our clients, and then get our industry partners under contract and get them moving. Give them a not to exceed threshold, and then we'll definitize it in stride, as construction gets underway. And so that was something that I was proud of. Our contracting community put together some pretty good products to help our contracting officers across the enterprise apply these authorities in a way that that kept us on the straight and narrow throughout the process and led to a speedy execution. So what that looked like was firm fixed price, C contracts, we call them, individual contracts. And if you remember the Javits Center up there in New York, that was really a service contract for an in-house service provider to set up equipment, essentially screens and things initially, and then contrast that to what we did down the DC Convention Center. That was also a firm fixed price design build construction contract where we had Hensel Phelps coming in applying a lot of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing heavy work to that solution. So I would say those undefinitized contracts really helped us execute. And so we're talking 443 bed spaces in less than 30 days. And it was just incredible, contractor working shifts. I think I'll have the opportunity to talk about that a little later. But we're on authorities right now. Another authority that we were looking for was authority to execute from FEMA. And that comes down in the form of a FEMA mission assignment. And from those mission assignments, they give us task orders and to do the design and construction. So not only were the core districts lashed up with the folks on the ground who were in need of the facilities. These are the state and plus DC folks in charge of, their medical task force leads on behalf of the governor or the mayor of DC. but also our FEMA partners who were actually, employing the Corps at the time and providing the resourcing. So a lot to manage, but I'd like to say that we had, in the final analysis, very little friction compared to what it could have been when it comes to getting the authorities and then applying the authorities. So, and I think it goes back to what a lot of the panelists stated. I think that everybody could see the sense of urgency. It was, it was easy to get behind the effort to accomplish providing the additional bed spaces, essentially. So, I think, I think that'll do it for me. I'll pass it back to you, Jim, for the next panels. Thanks.
Thank you, Colonel. And I understand, coming on and off of audio, every day's online meeting is a new experience and what tragedy is about to befall you. We all know that from experience. Dara, I'm going to come back to you from the core perspective, from the USACE, from the buyer perspective, from the Make It Happen team perspective. Is before you could even mobilize a design build team, I ponder this. You had different types of facilities. You were moving super fast. You didn't know exactly what was going to happen, how to get your arms around it. And I emphasize, get your arms around it. How did you discern at the go-in point about how much do we think this is going to cost? How long is this going to take? Is this a reasonable facility to use? Can you talk about that big brain activity that kicked off every exercise?
Sure, Jim. So, certainly getting the arms around the mission, it was daunting. Not going to lie about that, and always tried to remain kind of calm, cool, and collected because there was so much coming at us and in such a short period of time, and we were constantly doing course corrections. But, one of the most challenging things was it was constantly changing. We would start going in one direction and then, the state would make a decision based on the data that they were getting that they wanted to go in a different direction. And so, a lot of, hurry up and go, no, wait, stop. That was a bit frustrating for the team. So, it's hard to kind of get your arms around what you don't know because we were doing a lot of assessments of facilities across the 3 states. So we went to 42 different locations, but in one location, we may have done, 4 or 5 assessments of a particular of buildings at that location. So we did have a checklist that was developed, and certainly there were other districts. New York District was kind of one of the first districts out ahead of others. So we were certainly in constant communication with them, kind of getting some of those lessons learned. They had a checklist that they were using for their facility assessments. We kind of made some tweaks to it based on feedback, lessons learned from them. But we had, just some like go, no go criteria. So, if it didn't have an operational sprinkler system, or it didn't have operational fire alarm, or there was asbestos or mold or lead in the building, those were like, we're not even considering this facility type thing. Now, keep in mind, the state is the one who would identify what facilities they wanted to be assessed. And some may have been owned by the local government, some may have been private. We looked at anything from hotels, dormitories, hospitals that were basically recently closed hospitals. We looked at certainly arena type facilities. So we had lots of different facilities that we were asked to look at. So we would provide all this data to the state, and then we're kind of in this waiting mode to find out, do they want us to go to the next step? Like, what facilities are they going to select? And then are we going to actually develop the performance work statement and then give that to the state for them to actually do the build piece? Or are we going to do both, the development of the PWS as well as the build? So lots of unknowns, and many times we really wouldn't know until like the last minute. And then, the expectation is when you're told you're going to have a contract awarded like within 24 hours. And certainly with the use of the undefinitized contract actions, we had the ability to do that. But because it was constantly changing, it was definitely, it was daunting. There's no doubt about it. But we did have the tools that the Medical Center of Expertise had developed. So they were very helpful, but they were very, very high level. And they were for, primarily like, a hotel to ACF or an arena to ACF type concept. So when we had like shuttered hospitals that were potentially being considered, we could use maybe one of those tools or those templates, but it wasn't something that could be used completely. And we would have to then tailor it to the individual facilities. Particularly in the case of Maryland, it's one of the only states that actually looked at their correctional facilities and their prison population. And so they wanted to take, a correctional facility that was no longer in use and convert that into a space that could be used for COVID positive patients. Well, we didn't have a template for that. So those types of things were very daunting, but the teams that we had in our engineering division and just the skill sets that they have, really strong mechanical and electrical engineers, we were able to do this. Now, keep in mind, these were very high level performance work statements. And then once we had a contractor on board, that's really where we took those high level documents and then very quickly turned them into a working set of documents that we could build off of. We also, our North Atlantic division, they developed a tool for doing cost estimates. And we quickly found out that that tool was not really adequate. I think it's hard for cost estimators to kind of sit in the frame of mind that we were working in and build that into the tool, meaning, you're working, round the clock, you're paying lots of premium time to the workforce. You're also working in an environment where, you have to protect your workers. We've got COVID out there. So there were a lot of things that weren't taken into account in the tool. And so we were vastly underestimating the cost of some of these facilities. So we found that out quickly and we made adjustments. So I guess, the big key thing is just having a team that was really flexible and able to adapt quickly and just make, course corrections along the way. I think if we had to do this again, we would be pros at it. I think we did it very, very well, but certainly, we had to do a lot of this on the fly. The last thing that I'll add is, the Corps of Engineers, we respond to natural disasters, every year. Every year we've got natural disasters that happen across our country and even in other countries, and we respond. And we have, contracts that are in place for that. And we've got, kind of the tools. We have debris teams that are already pre-positioned in place. And we've got lots of things. For the ACF mission, it really didn't fit in any type of other natural disaster that we've responded to. But what we did have going for us is it aligned very clearly with what we do every single day, which is design and construct complex facilities, just normally not in this very short duration of time. But I think, all in all, the team rose to the occasion and, certainly with the help of our industry partners.
Dara, that was a fantastically frightening tee up for this question to the construction side. So you get to here it is, you make an award. Katrina, you get a Friday night phone call. Happy day for you. The award comes in the email inbox. You have 24 hours to mobilize. 24 hours, maybe 36 if you're lucky, as I remember living through 6 of these. Holy cow, the trigger's been pulled. How does one do that? What happens next? How do you definitize the unquantifiable in such a short period of time? And did the design build project delivery choice make a difference?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. So I'll start my response with an answer to your last question, which was there was no way this would have been able to have been accomplished had it not been for the design build delivery. It was absolutely necessary. I feel like as I reflect on the experience that it was almost one of those moments where any of us who were Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts in our youth, it was almost like we were made for this moment where everyone just intuitively, and even without asking, everyone just intuitively before they showed up at the job site that first day just packed a bag full of Clorox wipes and power cords and extension cords and Lysol wipes, because we just kind of knew that it would be needed. We didn't know how, but we knew that we needed stuff. We needed rations, we needed supports to support our people so that our people could do the work of definitizing the contract. And, you know, if I start with how we started by that, the very first thing I did was with my team, we took the statement of work and we converted it into a Google Excel doc. And we gave the people that were the designers and our head superintendent and our head designer who was on the ground, we gave them access to that. And we had a call every morning at 7 a.m. and we had a call every afternoon at 4 p.m. And at 7 a.m. we were outlining what needed to be accomplished in terms of design that day, what needed to be accomplished in terms of determination of what the existing conditions were, and what physically also needed to be built, because we hit the ground running. So we'd meet every morning at 7, we'd figure out what needed to be accomplished by the afternoon. We'd talk at 4, did we do it, did we not? And do we need to tweak the design based on what we are finding? And so we had 2 parallel tracks. We had our boots on the ground, which were literally our eyes and ears. And then we found a Spring Hill Suites 4 miles up the road. And I walked in there and I said, I'd like to reserve all of your conference rooms right now. And I would also like to reserve 8 rooms on a night-by-night basis. Can we just start there? And we took over 2 conference rooms that had a dividing partition, you know, pulled the partition apart so the room was as large as it could be. With our COVID space requirements, we had to be, of course, at least 6 feet apart. We went ahead conservatively and just said, you're going to be 10 feet apart. So we had a max capacity of 10 in that room when really we needed 20 or more in every single design conversation. So we'd have 10. Often we'd have the client, the core, whomever it may be from the correctional facility, representatives from them in the room with us. And then we'd put 2 people in each of the rooms. We had an MEP hotel room. We had a security and finishes hotel room. And we posted people there and everyone knew which room they were in. And that was a max capacity of 2. And so it was an orchestration of we're apart but together. And we're in constant communication. And oh, by the way, we have to keep everyone hydrated, both at the Spring Hill Suites and on site, keep them fed, caffeinated, and moving. Because if they were going to pass out from exhaustion, it was not going to do anyone any good. So there was a lot of kind of humanistic servant leadership tied to taking care of each other. That was a fundamental piece. But other than that, I mean, it was constant communication between the morning and the afternoon calls. It was improvising on the fly. It was submittals were coming up with the product, putting it in front of whoever the particular representative was from the core or the end user and saying, what do you think? You have an hour to decide. And you don't get a week to review the submittal. We're going to decide within the hour. And that's literally how everything went. And everyone was on board. It was a miracle, really. I hope I get the chance to experience that kind of, you know, collaboration again under different circumstances, but it was unlike anything I had ever seen.
Katrina, I hear the emotion and the satisfaction in your voice when you describe it. So let's let the designer Brent pile on to that. Is sure, design build was the contractual mechanism, Brent, but how long did it take for you to realize that it was really build and the design would follow sometime thereafter? How long did it take to get used to design were verbal commands to go buy something, to go do something? What did that feel like, Brent?
That's a fabulous way to put it, you know, build design. Been in lots of design build situations, and Jim, I don't think it took but just the first hour to recognize that's what this was going to be. That there were already subs in the field. They were already looking at demolition. Again, I was working in a mothballed hospital, right? And we all knew what floors we were working on, but they didn't know exactly where they were going. So again, it didn't take long to understand the short duration. It had to be build, then design. I think one of the things that hit us right off the bat was we had this undefinitized scope, 110 beds on these floors in this hospital. But it was, we still needed to do our own assessment, even as designers. We needed to know exactly where those beds were, what kind of beds they were. They had 4-bedroom footprints, they had 2-bedroom footprints, they had single bed footprints. So that assessment is part of, we weren't designing, we were assessing, right? So that we could lead the builder and say, you will be working in this room. There is a single bed in this one, right? That information had to flow quick and fast. Again, part of the definitization process. So yeah, it was build first, very little design. Jim, I think you kind of came up with a term even before we hit the ground and you saw it. You said, you know, we're used to, as AEs, we draw something, we throw it over the fence to the contractor, they go build it, design, build. Even in design, build, there's still kind of that sequence. We take time to draw, we take time to work it out, solve the problem, throw it over the fence, right? Obviously, this was in reverse. And Jim coined a good one. He says, what do you got to do? Sketch on your arm, sketch on the floor, whatever it takes to communicate what needs to be done. And that's what we did. I mean, those were the first hours. Those were the first days as we started understanding what the scope was to meet this speed and assessment, and then starting the ideation. And that wasn't just on the architectural side. The MEP side is where our compadres doing that. I think some of the other things that hit us right off the bat, just it's kind of I guess a funny story that I don't think I expected was a 12-day contract and the term long lead item came up. Well, what's a long lead item in a 12-day contract? You know, normally we think of long lead items as elevators, right? In a big design project, long lead items. So what was a long lead item that came up in this? Door frames. To get door frames fabricated in time, what we needed on site and delivered was a long lead item. So we had to make quick decisions for long lead items. MEP the same way. Fans, these additional fans, exhaust fans, things that were supplementing the unit, the air handling units. So this whole new definition of long lead item was non-traditional. It really went back to this build design, you know, define the need and go from there. I think the next thing was the contract said, well, you'll do as-built drawings. Okay, we as designers, what does that mean? What kind of design drawings do we do? We talked about sketching on your arm or on the floor or whatever. You know, we needed to do enough sketching, drawing to communicate well. Although many times even written narrative was communication, right? So written narrative was a little different than we've done before. Written narrative that told a subcontractor to go do X, right? Rather than doing a drawing, it was a very descriptive narrative. So that was different. That was most definitely different for us. I think what we did determine in the end from a drawing and execution perspective about this build design, any design documents that we did, at least in our location, it was to basically document what we did to the facility. It recognized this was going to be a temporary situation. This is intended to be temporary, right? And so in our case, so the owner of the hospital knew what actions were taken. How was this air handler changed? How was the test and balance redone for a particular floor? What doors, what cross-quarter doors? Where did you affect a smoke barrier? You know, things like that. So it was documenting after the fact so that there was an understanding how their facility was affected. So interesting process. I liked what Katrina said though. And I keep coming back to that word collaboration. I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it between designer, contractor, subs, owner, Corps of Engineers. It was absolutely extraordinary. So I'll turn it back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Brent. We're going to change our category of questions now. Now we're going to get to, let's talk about more people, and I'll ask the speakers to merge some personal experiences into this topic of people as I look at the schedule and see that we're right at 1300 now and start moving toward the end of our conversation, but I hope you had your questions too, audience. Colonel Litz, we're going to come back to you, sir. When the mission, and I ask you this as someone that's worked all over the world in dangerous and violent spots in all kinds of unforeseen and unknowable circumstances, sir. When the mission development occurred for this task and the key staff had to be selected and personnel had to be recruited and failure wasn't an option, how did you identify those key leaders, sir? And what did you speak to them about in terms of encouraging them or enticing them to participate? How did that actually happen, sir?
Hey, thanks, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Hey, so I think, so I'll speak for Baltimore District. You know, we have a lot of districts out there. I would say that there are a lot of similarities, but some differences in how we did it. You know, it was left up to the districts to how we would execute. I think it's worth noting, you know, we have our emergency management staff and architecture in place for the things that we commonly do for FEMA and the emergency support functions that we support. But this was a little different because this is the, you know, design, build, construction at this point. So in my district, we kept our emergency management staff engaged. That's where the resourcing, you know, all the financial management, all these backside support things that no one will ever see. You know, that's where that was getting taken care of, and reporting as well. So, but we stood up an ad hoc task force. I picked a very strong senior civilian. It's Dara. She's on the phone here. Picked her for a very good reason. There's you know, nobody in the district that has more construction management experience than her. And she's a great leader. Pulled her out of her day job and completely focused her on this and gave her carte blanche authority to pick whoever she needed in the district. And that's who we're going to give her to execute. It wasn't hard. We have a lot of volunteers in the district. In fact, you know, I don't think we had any trouble getting people to volunteer for, you know, to help out across the board. So, you know, two main types of organizations within her task force. They were the assessment teams made up of the disciplines to get into whatever facility it was and to do the assessment and write the reports. And then once it came down to construction, these are construction management teams, and they mirrored the, you know, they did shift work right along with our industry partners, doing construction around the clock, you know, 24/7. And and I had some military officers that I put into the task, pulled them out of their day jobs, and just as expediters and organizers. We had a lot of stakeholders to coordinate with and to take some of that pressure off our assessment teams and our construction management teams that were working for DARA. You know, we're communicating with our FEMA partners, state EM directors. I'm communicating with mayors and governors, the medical mission leads, and all and the like. You know, there was a whole lot of communication going on between, you know, above the staff that we had to organize to actually execute the mission. And I think it's worth mentioning, you know, in the people and staffing question, the service providers, the medical service providers are also in there. I mean, they're the ones we're actually building these facilities for. And in a lot of cases, that medical staff was not identified. In fact, that in a lot of cases, that was a limiting factor, you know, across the country, is finding enough medical staff to go into these facilities. Maybe we would have built a lot more if there were more medical staff. But it was both, you know, publicly provided and supported medical staff, you know, our private partners, and also DOD was providing medical augmentees where they were prepared to. So all these folks were in the equation, and so we had to have a pretty good, you know, very, very quick, you know, partnering sessions and get everybody on the same sheet of music so that our ad hoc task forces can execute. And also the communication, I'll go ahead and say it here, it helped prevent a lot of scope creep, as you can imagine, as we're building this airplane in flight. You know, there has to be a good idea cutoff, and that cutoff happens really quick. So just a credit to, you know, to everyone involved. I think we were able to very quickly resolve, you know, what the scope would actually be that we would execute, and then just execute it. And so I couldn't be more happy with that effort. So, okay, I think hopefully that answered your question. I know we're getting long in this meeting, so back over to you, Jim. Thanks.
Thank you, Colonel. Dara, I come back to you from the practical matter on the execution side. So there you were given the charge, and this is the moment where the people skills the EQ matters as much as the IQ, I think, from trying to do other difficult things when we're practicing the art of the impossible. So my question for you is, what particular group of the team did you find had the most impact, or maybe had the most interesting challenge to have positive impact when you're practicing the impossible? Was it the procurement team, the contracting team, the design team, the construction operations folks? Where did you see the most magic taking place?
Well, Jim, I would say across all of those elements. I mean, really, for this particular mission, it came down more to the people skills versus the technical skills, at least in our leadership roles. Okay. I mean, certainly, the folks that are out there that we had, doing day-to-day kind of inspections and stuff and solving problems, they need to have those technical skills. But, I was very selective in who I picked to serve in our key leadership roles on the ACF task force. And particularly with regards to the mission assignments where we actually had a build mission. So fortunately, having a lot of time in the Corps of Engineers, with most of it being spent in construction, I know the staff that we have. And so I was very selective in who I was picking to lead each of those teams. And mostly, all of our engineers have great technical skills, but maybe not all of them have the strongest interpersonal skills. And really, for this mission, you needed both. I needed individuals who could take the mindset of how we do business every day and just take that out of their minds and replace it with, we're doing this on the fly. We've got to do things obviously smart and safe, but we can't follow our normal process and procedures or we will never deliver. So we have some people in our organization, because that's what they do day in and day out. They're very rigid. They can't get out of that, way of thinking. We would not have been able to do this mission if we had individuals like that in key leadership positions. So I was very careful in who I selected. I selected those people who had a strong technical background, but they had those strong interpersonal skills that they needed, because they were working with a variety of partners, not just our AE and constructor, but also with our stakeholders, which also included, the medical staff that eventually would operate these facilities. You needed an individual who could, influence where we needed to influence. Maybe we weren't the decision makers or we weren't in control of something, but certainly that decision would have an impact on us. I needed a person who could influence those decisions. So those people skills were huge. I mean, certainly on the construction part of it, but also on the procurement and the contracting side. We were asking the impossible, really, of our industry partners. And so, if you have someone who's very heavy-handed, who maybe can't be empathetic to a view of another, of their other team member, that's not going to work either. And particularly when we were asking to definitize these contracts within 10 days of award, you can't use your normal process and procedures. And I will say, on all of our build missions, we were successful in definitizing the contracts in the time frame that we were given. And so that's huge. But that was all able to happen because of the people, and the people that we had the technical skills, but they had that ability to form very quickly strong relationships with each and every one of their counterparts to make the impossible possible. Over, Jim.
Dara, you're spot on. And I think it's a good segue to the construction side, because Katrina, from your perspective, the construction business often is built around making promises to do the impossible under extraordinary circumstances, because you promise date certain delivery and exact price when it's an unknowable. It's literally an unknowable. This is the most extreme example of the knowable. So again, I ask you about recruiting the right people. I'm sure you had plenty of people volunteer, but how did you hone to who the right people were to execute?
Mm-hmm. So I think I'll echo much of what my fellow panelists have said already, which is the ability to handpick who needed to be part of this team. And one of the most remarkable things is, you know, sometimes when you say that you want to pull someone onto a team, there may be red tape based on their current obligations, the client that they're delivering a certain product for. The wonderful thing about it is that all of the red tape just fell by the wayside, and there was never a no. When a colleague of mine asked for a certain person to be pulled onto the team, or I asked for a certain person to be pulled onto the team, it was always yes. And what was actually a really nice unanticipated byproduct of that was the way that some of our clients then reached back out to us and said, we're so glad that you guys are finding a way to do something that is meaningfully helpful. Take this person, do what you need, we'll wait patiently, we'll improvise and adjust. The layers of accommodation were not just direct within our company and not just direct within the subcontractors and the design partners that we had. So that was nice to see that ripple effect downstream. You know, EQ was obviously a huge part of it, but it couldn't all be EQ. You had to have your indispensable consultants, your technical experts. You know, most of the people that we picked were high on both. On occasion, you just have to have that person who may be almost exclusively high on the IQ, and we'd put them in bubble wrap and make sure that they were fed and hydrated and caffeinated, and we'd clear the hurdles. If there was an issue from a design perspective that was a hurdle or an obstacle for that person, everyone would rush to it and clear that hurdle to make sure that that person could give exactly what they needed to the team, which was their contribution. So there was a lot of, it sounds squishy. And I know I kind of spilled the beans on the prior question that you asked me, but a lot of it was taking care of each other and anticipating where things might go sideways and staying 2 steps in front of where the conversation was and making sure that we were thinking ahead about where those pitfalls were going to be for members of the design and the construction team.
Katrina, good story on the construction side. So let's finish with the designer about the people part, or as you said, the technical term squishy part. Katrina, I like that description, the squishy part. So everybody knows we like to make fun of architects because it's easy. We're engineers, right? What we do is very iterative and sometimes confusing and interactive, and problem solving from an idea to a building form is kind of a mysterious process to a lot of people. Part science, part art, an answer comes out. That was not this circumstance. This was the design process as performance art. Brent, were there certain people that could cotton to that and others that could not operate in that atmosphere?
That's a great question, Jim. I recall back as you and I worked together in prep for the ones that we were going to execute, we had these conversations. Who's the right people to do this kind of work? High stress environment. You're taking them away from their homes, working potentially 24/7 for days and days and days. We were all just inside COVID, a lot of uncertainty about, you know, I'm going to be working, you know, I've been away from people for X amount of time. I'm putting myself at risk. So we had a lot of questions about that, right? And then what's the right person in the field, right? Did they have to have design build experience before? Did they not? Jim, you alluded to it, you know, many times our side, it's designers, right? But I think what we found and we realized real quick, we needed the most rounded, well-rounded skill set person as possible, right? Because of the speed on the ground, low ego, right? Again, designers sometimes have these egos. Egos had to be put aside at the door, knowing that you can't work in silos. You know, we use that term here in HKS. We say the whole architect, you know, someone that can design, understand the high conceptual, but being able to execute and give direction all the way through to a construction contractor. You know, that's the right people that had to be done. You know, from our side, I believe we executed well up and down everyone we did, and we did choose the right people. I think the other part with it, maybe it goes without saying, you know, it wasn't for a young inexperienced designer or architect or engineer because of that high stress, the quick pace and everything. It took senior leadership. I heard the Corps talk about their senior leadership that led this. And that's where on our side, I think we did the right thing. We put senior people in the place. Maybe they hadn't done this hands-on work in a while, but they had the experience and they could go out in the field and they could collaborate. I think I mentioned about designers putting their egos at the door. In our case, we're working in an existing hospital. We like to be thinking about patient care and the patient experience and the staff experience. And we had to recognize real quick, people that were going and doing this was, we're going to be doing work that's not traditional hospital rooms and hospital work and renovation. And I recall the Corps PM said, put us in perspective. He said, remember, this is a battlefield hospital. Well, boy, as designers, any architects, you go, well, that changes your perspective, right? And one of the things I said later was when we got through with this, I said, it ain't pretty, but it's functional and it does the job. Again, so it was a different world for us as architects and designers about the product we were helping deliver. But again, I go back to, we talked about people skills. We had to have people that were collaborative. It was people that could say, yes, I can go work hand in hand, glove with a contractor and the subs on a daily basis, and I can go do that. Collaboration, that word keeps coming back over and over again, and I don't think it can be overstated.
Brent, thank you. So we're going to do something a little bit different here. Colonel Litz, I'll give you the heads up. We're coming back to you, sir. This will be our final round of questions, but we're going to change it in the interest of time to this. These are about personal reflections. So like they sometimes do on Talking Head TV, let's have about a 30-second answer to all of my panelists here. You all have been great respondents to these questions, but let's do 30 seconds for this. And the question is to you, Colonel Litz. You've been all over the world. You've done a lot of violent and dangerous things in a lot of peculiar places. What was it that struck you, sir, about this particular mission set that left an imprint on you?
Hey, thanks, Jim. Can you hear me?
Coming over loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thanks. Hey, I think it was how focused everybody was. I mean, industry partners, our clients, the Corps. I think really we all could envision maybe it's our loved ones are going to be in these facilities, or it could be you. And I think the mission was very, very palpable, and the sense of urgency was there. I'll always remember that. And it was here. It was in the continental U.S. It wasn't on foreign soil, and I think that really got everybody's attention, and it cut out a lot of the friction and BS that we typically find ourselves in. And I think that's what. I'll remember the most out of this. Lessons learned. I know we had comment in the chat section of the meeting room. I was very proud of the way both industry partners were communicating with each other, across company lines, and also core districts were communicating with each other, sharing real-time lessons learned so we can make improvements on the next facility and the next facility. And we greatly benefited from that. That kind of collaboration in the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. And we still we're deploying those lessons learned right now within the district with our support to Capitol Hill security right now. So, I mean, they aren't just, those lessons really were learned, not just written down. So, so those are some things I'm very proud of. And I'm also about to end here, but very proud of the way my district came together, and leaders emerged. They might not necessarily be the ones who have the most rank, but the true leaders emerged. Really across everybody's organization. I think we're all stronger today, and this isn't over right now. There's the vaccine support, and the Corps of Engineers, has very much like the ACF mission, developed a set of plans for FEMA for our partners to consider when they're thinking about standing up their vaccination sites right now. So this mission really, it was not over. This mission continues to this day. So anyway, Jim, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and it was a great day. Thanks.
That was powerful, sir. Dara, what was it that personally touched you?
So, you know, I guess I have to say I've had the great fortune to work on many amazing things in the Corps of Engineers, but this by far was the most amazing, and for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, I really do think we did the impossible. You know, when I look back at what we accomplished in such a short period of time, I'm still in disbelief. So that's one. The other is people, the people. Like from the bottom all the way to the top, you know, from, you know, the electrician or, you know, the plumber to, you know, a project engineer, a field engineer to, you know, a leader of a company. People, they literally put their personal lives on hold to work on this mission and to accomplish really the unbelievable. And, you know, for people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and experiences to kind of not do business as usual, to pull together and to deliver in a time of need for our nation is what is so amazing and impactful to me. And I am very, very proud to have been able to be a part of the ACF mission. And thank you very much today for the opportunity to speak to the group. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Darren. Katrina, I've heard you make comments already in your other comments in the presentation or today's conversation. What touched your heart about doing this work?
What was amazing to me, and I'll echo something that Dara said, which is the just immediate willingness of everyone to jump in, and knowing full well they were leaving spouses, you know, children, families, whatever it was that is their normal life. It got dropped because everyone was holed up somewhere in a hotel telling each other, you go get 2 hours of sleep, you go get 3 hours of sleep. Just, you know, it was insane. And the disbelief part was a very real thing. Like Dara said, that was a very real thing for me. When I first saw the statement of work and I first showed up and I walked through the prison, I was like, this is insane. I don't know how we're going to do this. And I thought to myself, but I cannot show that. I have to keep that to myself. I have to put on the image of absolutely, we're going to get this done. Don't know how, but we're going to get it done. And everyone was operating that way. And just this like wellspring of where did this come from? And it was universal, top to bottom, like Dara said. And that was the part that, man, I mean, that was something that we actually at Clark had a few discussions about. How do we capture that and bring it back home? How do we pull that back and infuse and teach as a teachable moment our younger junior professionals within Clark about doing something that is completely outside of what you think your job description is, to be nimble, to be flexible, and to just get after it. And so also the eagerness for those on the home front at Clark to hear what was it, what can I do to be better at being ready for something like that in the future. The willingness to be ready for the next time, hopefully there won't be, but the willingness to say, all right, let's get ourselves completely as a whole company ready for this for the next time. That was heartwarming for me.
That was great, Katrina. Brent, can you top any of that, or was it just a normal day at work for you?
I tell you what came to my mind with your question was, you know, for most of us, the timing of the one that we worked on, all of us, the whole country, we'd pretty well been locked down. We were in our homes. And I remember asking myself questions like, what can I do? What can I do in this very difficult time? And when the opportunity came, I thought, this is what I can go do. This is a way that I can serve, right? Yeah, it's a job. Yeah, it's a contract award, and I can go serve. And, after I was there and I delivered it, and a lot of my colleagues, they were, patting me on the back and great job. And I thought, it's just serving. It was just serving was what it was. And I think the second thing I'd say is every day that we were there were several conversations, and it was always about the mission. I heard Colonel Litz say that. Every day someone talked about why we were doing this and what we were trying to do. And it was the mission every single day. And there was always a conversation of, we're going to get this done, and let's hope it's never used. Let's hope it's never used, which to me really put the picture on the purpose and why we were there together. So that's what I drew it from a personal nature. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, all of you. Powerful presentations and comments from all of you. It was a shared piece of living and shared sacrifice. And it's always mission first, right? Men and women always. Great story. Selena, coming back to you, thank you for inviting us. Thank you for allowing time for us to talk about what we believe to be a miracle. It's great to be with all of you today. Back to you, Selena.
Oh, who wants to end this? Most patriotic story, of mission first, and Katrina, how to get to a yes is emblazoned in my head, and it's a rare glimpse how a team of top professionals in the AEC industry and our military engineers came together overnight and stayed together, and you're living to tell the story. I don't know if this is therapy for you, but to all of us who've listened with, rapt attention, and Jim, I don't know how you made it so enjoyable. And, Colonel Litz, thank you so much. Dara, hope to see you and talk to you again. I think we'll be talking about this throughout the year. I must close the program. I do want to say, the DC Post promises a great year, our monthly programs. We still have to go virtual, but our programs committee, keep looking at our website. We do still plan to have our joint events that Philios has always successfully organized, and we will be having our small business conference that this year Whitney Stowell will be leading the way on that one. And of course, our young professionals are going to be showcased this year with Daryl Sparks. So, we want to get our young members, our graduate engineers, more communications with and involvement with our universities and schools of engineering in the area. So take the survey with the QR code. Thanks for joining in. If you want to have a few Q&A, whoever would, the panel, are you able to stay around for a little bit? If you have, yeah, great. If so, do stay on. I'll be on. And if you've got some questions, please, I guess, raise your hand. Jim, do you still want to moderate questions, or?
I certainly can. We had so many were answered in the chat box, which I thought was great as we went. But if anyone literally wanted to jump in, it probably is free for all time, near last call, I think.
And it's great. We didn't even have to show a picture. So we were using our listening ears, and thank you for telling such a fantastic story. Best lunch ever. So I'll hand it over to anybody who'd like to raise a question. You can go on video even. I don't see anyone. Anyone?
May have to go back to work, Selena. May have to go back.
I know. All right. Well, again, thank you to the panel. The panel. Brent, great story, and Katrina. You'll be forever synonymous with what you've done, and perhaps there'll be more stories to tell. Thank you. So if you have to go, yes, sadly, I see a hand up. Who's that? Is there one question?
Yeah, this is Colonel Retired T.W. Williams. Hey, I'm with Southland Industries, and we actually teamed up with Hensel Phelps for the Washington, D.C. field hospital effort. I sent a question in, I think for Brent. It's one of those, all the lessons learned from across all of the field hospitals that was the protocols were applied. Those requirements are still much in need today, as they're either old infrastructure that's trying to be improved within the footprint of the medical health facilities, medical treatment facilities. As part of industry, just as we were a part of supporting the effort for COVID, we saw that there's a huge maintenance backlog in the health infrastructure, facility infrastructure. I was a garrison commander Fort Belvoir for 3 years, so I got a feeling of the pain that folks must be having. So the question is how can we as industry team up with whoever, the Corps of Engineers? I know a lot of contracts out there. I know there are a lot of MATOCs that may address some of the things, but there seemed to be a very big challenge that DHA has now taken over all of the service medical treatment facilities with a backlog of $16 billion. To me, that seems like something, and a number of those particular problems that they're having are life, safe, and health issues. And so we're out here saying, hey, our hands are up. We'd like to be a part of trying to provide the solutions to some of the issues that they're having in the maintenance backlog. Over.
Colonel Williams, this is Jim. I don't know that on the service provider side we could add anything very intelligent to that, but Colonel Litz may be able to, or Dara may be able to, but that's a very complex and real world question, sir.
Hey, Jim, it's Colonel Litz. I'll take a shot. So I think it comes down to competition for resourcing. There are a lot of backlogged maintenance and recap needs of the nation. Our civil works infrastructure is, one of those areas. So I think, industry partners, going to your channels where you advocate for the causes that, ACEC and others that have access to our perhaps elected officials and decision makers that control where the resourcing is going. I think that would be a good way to get the message out there. I think that the executors of the work, like the Corps of Engineers, we'd love to, get after it. I think it's, we'll staff up for it, but without the resourcing, I'm not sure there's a lot we can do at our level, but so maybe that gives you something to think about.
It does. In fact, I wrote an article that was published here just last month on addressing those particular issues using third-party financing. In other words, using either energy saving performance contracts or utility energy service contracts. Sure, cannot cover all of the maintenance backlog, but specifically focusing on the life, health, and safety issues, using other people's money to pay for something that's life cycle cost effective within a period of 10 years, you would think would be something that would be attractive enough for all the services to take part in. So that was one of the solution sets that was in the article that I wrote. And but anyways, we know that there is a need. Understand resources is an issue, and our offer to that is, use other people's money to get it done so that it pays itself back in 10 years or less.
That's a good thought, sir. Good thought. Selena, back to you.
Well, thank you, Colonel Williams. Good discussion. I mean, very topical about money and the maintenance.
I learned all this from General Van Antwerp. I was his XO for 2 years, and let me tell you, dealing with infrastructure, it was a major issue during the time that he was the XM. But I appreciate all your thought and opportunity to speak.
Very good. Well, with that, I'd like to close the meeting today. Look forward to seeing you all in the year, hopefully next month. March 18. Thanks again. Special thanks from me. Thank you all. Get some lunch.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Bree.